Well, let's get some legal perspective now from Nthabiseng Dubazana, an expert at Dubazana Attorneys. Nthabiseng, good morning. I'm not sure if you were able to hear what Carl Niehaus had to say, but just the gist of it basically saying that the former president, Jacob Zuma, is not being treated equally. He should be protected by the Constitution, and he's not being protected. Your thoughts on that sentiment in terms of the context of this case?
Well, I would not say the fact that one should be protected over the other. Everybody deserves equal protection of the Constitution, so each one's rights should be protected in an equal basis. Remember, there's limitations to one's rights in terms of the Constitution, so it would depend on which stature the case is at, whereby your rights as an individual, in this case, Jacob Zuma's rights, can be limited, and to what extent, and based on what merits of each case. So at this stage, we can say that we can't outright say that his rights are being violated, because currently it's only an inquiry to find out whether or not he will be found guilty for failure to appear and to testify at the Zondo Commission. So right now the issue of rights is not exactly paramount.
All right, well, let's talk about the actual case itself now. And let's talk about the importance of what happens in the Constitutional Court today, or from today, with regard to this case, in terms of, yes, one, protecting the Constitution, and also the urgency of this, and how precedent-setting this can be for what happens when the Constitutional Court makes an order and somebody doesn't actually follow or doesn't comply going forward from this.
There's two facets to this case. Remember, there's still an application that Zuma has made in the High Court that still has not been heard. And the reason for him for failing to appear at the Zondo Commission was because he's saying that that application, the High Court, has not been attended to. And when the order was made by the Constitutional Court for him to go and testify at the Commission, the issue of the fact that he made an application for the removal, or the recusal rather, of Zondo from the Commission had not been entertained in the Constitutional Court. So if today an order is made that he is found guilty for failure to appear at the Commission, and he's then sentenced in accordance to what the court will decide upon, it then sets a precedent as to what is the Constitutional Court saying when a lower court is already dealing with a matter of a similar sort, and they're not giving any directives as to what the lower court should do about the matter that is before them. Arguably, like I've said, that matter was not canvassed the first time this matter went to the Constitutional Court. But now we're dealing with whereby we're going to sentence a person probably for failure to appear, and yet his reasons for failure to appear have not been dealt with in a lower court. Okay. So it will be very interesting how the Constitutional Court is going to play around this, because the illegal ramifications and the precedent that they're going to set is going to set off something very interesting and historical in the legal fraternity if they do that, if they convict him without the lower court directives.
Well, it is complicated indeed, and that was going to be my next question, is what happens, does that become sort of a moot point, the issue of Raymond Zondo recusing or not recusing himself, and that's still sitting in court as well. Would the Constitutional Court, with the higher court, with this issue landing there now, does that take a back seat? Does it get suspended? What happens with that process as well? What should happen?
What ought to have happened, in my opinion, is that the Zondo Commission, when it first made an application for Zuma to go and appear before it, they should have canvassed or included the issue that there's an application pending in the High Court for recusal, and then that should be part of the decision, is that all the issues before the court, but that was never dealt with. So now we're at a point whereby when they appear for the court today, it's still not being dealt with. I would have preferred that the Zuma legal house at least supply a replying affidavit specifically talking to that, saying that we think, we are of the opinion that we're not in contempt of court because there's an issue that is still pending, and that is the reason why we didn't appear, and therefore we should not be found guilty. But then again, that's now neither here nor there, because it wasn't done. So it is in a position whereby the court is solely relying on the affidavit that is before them, which is that of the commission. But they are aware that this is what's happening, so they have to make a directive. It can't just lay moot, and it can't just not be attended to. It has to be dealt with in one way or another.
So what ought to happen in court today with this stage of this issue then?
So the court can either choose to stay a judgment or dismiss it pending the outcome of the lower court application. If they decide that they continue with the inquiry and then they find that it is suitable to find Dr. Zuma guilty of the offense, then according to the Criminal Procedure Act, when you fail to attend or appear, or when you're in contempt of court or failure to attend court proceedings, you are fined, well, case law has increased it, you are fined about 5,000 rand or 3 months imprisonment. So I read somewhere that the commission is looking for about 2 years imprisonment. I don't even know how they would justify that in any manner or form. But yeah, no, that according to the CPA, that would be the maximum time that would be looking at. It's a fine or imprisonment or a suspended sentence or even a caution and discharge. So yeah, it can go either way today. We'll see how the court decides in terms of whether they're going to ignore, so to speak, everything that has transpired to date, especially the application, and just deal with the fact that he did not appear before the commission as per the directive on the previous occasion.
Well, Nthabiseng, just for clarity's sake, and to go back to the point you made before this about, how can this be happening now when we still have the issue of the recusal or the request for the application for the recusal of Zondo. Are we understanding correctly then when we say that he might have had a point at that point to say this matter is still being dealt with? This is why this issue shouldn't be going to the Constitutional Court at the moment. This is why that order actually doesn't matter right now, because this issue has not been dealt with. But by not filing those affidavits, by not replying or defending that in some way, he actually has shot himself in his foot for this process that's happening today, that he may have been able to have a good fight on his hands had he submitted that.
I think so. I think that at minimum, even if it was a 2-page document, it doesn't have to be a full 29, 30-page affidavit, just indicating that there's this case happening, there's this issue that I've raised that works hand in hand with the application that the court is going to hear today. May I request that this matter be dismissed and then reinstated at a stage whereby the lower court has made a decision pertaining to my application. But now it might just end up, it may work against him that he did not file any papers. But, every case has its own merits, so the court might find that his silence, which is his right at the end of the day, is still, covered, and then they don't make any ruling or do anything pertaining to this case. It might go either way, but I feel that it was not in the best light to not file anything at all.
So if there is a fine or there is some kind of jail term where there's a couple of months, whether it is 2 years like the commission is asking for, what would be his recourse then? What would be his leg to stand on? Could he fight that?
He could appeal the. Oh no, it's a constitutional court. He cannot appeal. So no, it will be a matter of either going to pay it, because it has to be a fine accompanied with imprisonment. It cannot, especially as a first offender, it cannot be direct imprisonment. It goes against the rule of law in that situation. So it will always be a fine accompanied with a term of imprisonment. So he'll probably either pay the fine and stay out of prison, and then life goes on.
All right, well, let's wait and see. And Nthabiseng Dubazana, thanks so much for just bringing us all the sides of this and the possibilities here. We'll definitely be watching this one. I don't think anybody's going to be doing anything else at that point.